And we have been talking about having some kind of a study to see if we could make the process a little more user-friendly. I talked to Probst, and there's no way we are getting a study funded, and this bill needs to go forward. So we can do a study. I have talked to Commissioner Tierney, and they will take it on, and if we do things like in consultation with stakeholders, then we are probably in the clear. And I believe if we're going to do anything, we are being asked to do a 3-year extension because it involves planning and acquisitions. And if you're going to do it, that's the time frame we've always done that allows things to be done in a timely manner.
Who is stakeholders?
Well, we have had, Annette Smith has contacted me and volunteered. The League of Cities and Towns would be, they'd be stakeholders. I don't know if Ms. Dingledine would be willing, but she definitely has some strong feelings that would go in, and
It seems like most of the stakeholders don't know their stakeholders until someone files.
well, yeah, but until there's a plan, there's nothing to file, so that's, we can take a look at that. Okay, so Mr. Porter, welcome. Someday we're gonna see you in person. But we can't hear you. I don't know, you doesn't say you're muted. Now you have a lovely green glow and we still can't hear you. Nope. Can't hear you. Nope. We can't hear you. You want to try and go out and come back in? Wait. No,
Oh, no, that's
That's
not
a-
my laptop. That will
Oh,
be,
good.
okay, her laptop.
Speakers are turned up then?
yeah, speakers are.
Speakers are turned up. Okay, why don't you try going out and coming back in?
Nice jovial man your friend is. He told me to tell Mazza hi from the favorite Undertaker, which I just did, and Mazza looked at me like I was crazy, so.
Okay, you're back. Can we hear you? We cannot hear you.
I think the speaker on the TV, Jill. Check that.
I know who would have turned it off. We're checking our,
When I first invited the room to the meeting.
Speakers up.
okay.
Your device just to test.
To see if it makes a difference. No great loss.
If you say something.
You don't need Bergers in the process.
So you're an IT expert, you ought to be able to fix it for us.
I keep them muted forever.
Yeah, I could hear us.
You can hear him?
No, I can hear our audio. so-
Okay, so Jill can hear our audio, so we're working. And we cannot hear Mr. Porter. Well, we'll just assign you all the work, yeah. Tacit approval. I don't know what to do. Maybe we could see if we can go on and see if Shadi can come down. Okay, we're gonna keep going through the agenda. We'll see if the tech people can come down and figure out what's going on. We already did that. Even I know how to do that. That's as far as I know.
Can you call?
Can you call? Yeah. Can you call in? Are you across the street or you somewhere
I don't know
else?
where.
Yeah, can't hear a thing. Um, yeah. Can you send him the number to call in? Joel send him the number, he can call in. And while we're working that out, I'm going on to Hunter Thompson.
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait, no. I know what that strange glow is, but it looks like something out of the body structures. Yeah.
I got no use for perjurers.
You grow them all over. We had one of those in the United States.
Well, all right. Welcome to Senate Finance. We are a very sedate committee, as you can tell. But welcome. Have you been here once before?
I've done remote before.
That's what I thought. This is your first time in person. Okay. So why don't you, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then any thoughts you have on the 248, the possible summer study, fall study.
So for the record, I'm Hunter Thompson, Director of Telecommunications for the Public Service Department. I actually brought a bunch of notes on the technical pieces and the reasons to get better cell coverage within the state, but I think we're all kind of past that. We all agree that better cell coverage is a good outcome that we're looking for the state of Vermont. So I watched the testimony from the past few days regarding the extension to 248A. And the position of the department is that we are ready to take on a study with the stakeholders that have been suggested on Friday, I believe, as well as other stakeholders defined to come back with some recommendations or at least notes on what we were told as ways to make 248 more accessible.
Okay. Questions? So
We being your.
Public Service Department, yes.
whose charge is to represent the interest of the public.
As opposed to what they have to do.
No, I
We
believe this
cannot
is-
bid, we have no money.
Orders up on this.
Okay, Mr. Porter's on the phone. Can we hear you now, Jim?
I don't know. How about now?
I can hear you just fine. This is starting to sound like an ad for some. Okay. Mr. Landis is in the witness chair. He's just volunteered you to do everything. Do you? Anything you would like us to know, like the 248A extension?
I think you said, well, I agreed that I think it should be for an additional 3 years. And I think I heard you say earlier that in this working group that League of Cities and Towns will be one of the participants, because I continue to believe that one of the issues is, you know, in 248A, the legislature gave deference to the positions of the towns, which I think was a great thing. The problem is kind of like the communities at large, the municipal bodies or the select board, they're in disagreement too. So it's very infrequent that we actually get a town position, you know, upon which we can support substantial deference. And I think working with League of Cities and Towns, you know, might help with that problem, because I think they've got a very effective tool. It's just, it doesn't seem to be used that often.
Okay, they are taking up the usual seat here in the corner, but I think it is on the record that the league definitely is one group that we would like to be consulted extensively. Okay, cell service in the state. Just what have we got? I mean, yeah, let's Yeah, you got all those statistics, let's
Uh,
take a look at it.
community cell service in the state, how it's starting to come down to an issue of equity and the ability to help underserved populations within the state of Vermont. I think COVID really illustrated that. But in the past 10 years or so, I've been able to pull data that for people 18 to 29, we've gone from 12% to 28% accessing the internet solely through their cellular device. For people, what's another one? For people with less than a high school diploma, we've gone from 14% to 32% solely accessing the internet through their cellular device. For people who make under $30,000 a year, 27% solely use their cell phone to access the internet, and for people making between $30,000 and $50,000 a year, 19%. So that puts it at nearly 46% of people who make under $50,000 a year use their cellular phone as their only way to get on the internet. You look at those numbers and it's really becomes apparent. And then we've seen the increase in government services which are offered. Unless you want to wait 3 hours at the DMV, you need to either go online and make an appointment, or you need to have the ability to make a phone call and set up an appointment. If you want to file for unemployment, you need to either go online and be able to call the Department of Labor and use their application to file an unemployment claim. Similarly, to file your weekly claim with the Department of Labor, most claims are required to file online. If you don't want to file online, you're required to call the claim center during normal business hours to have a CSR file your claim on your behalf. Due to some work cert requirements that are only available online. And I know a lot about labor, okay, that's why I can promise. Also with AHS, we found that child learners were largely left behind when they didn't have access to the internet when schools went home. And we had a lost year in education. I had a stepson who was in 5th grade at the time, and he was lucky. We have internet access at our house. Some of his classmates were not so lucky. They found themselves falling behind, unable to check on their assignments, or unable to turn their work in when they're unable to have internet access. Probably got some stuff I can chime in that listening to the testimony last week, I agree with some of the criticisms in terms of accessibility for people today on a personal level. I don't know if that's the department's current stance. And I have no problem. I'd be happy to participate in the working group to make sure that the whole process is more accessible.
Any questions? Senator McDonald.
If you be approved for the folks to do the study, how long would it take to get done?
Now, I'm not sure. I have been with PSD for only about 5 weeks now. This was my first study, so I could get back to you with how long previous ones have taken, if you'd like to know. That's not off the top of my head.
I would be reluctant to just extend what we're doing now for 3 years. Studies and come back in a timely fashion. Within the sunset law for 3 years means we have the status quo for another 3 years.
We can put, when the study committee comes back, we can change the hearing rules and, we can change the process.
If we
But
take it up.
yeah, and I'm thinking we do our normal January 1st or December 15th, but have it come back for next legislative session. But the issue doesn't seem to be with the process itself. It's how user-friendly the process is. And I think, when the towns intervened, the towns got heard, and and it seems to be both of the big issues that were brought to us were individuals. The town wasn't unhappy. There was an individual, maybe 2 individuals, and there's always a balance there between the public good of when your car slides off the road and can you call emergency services when you get stuck up to your waist in the snowbank. can you, you know, get somebody to come get you out if you can't get yourself out, ski off the trails and you're lost? You know, all of those services, we've heard about the way to locate firefighters that are in a building. The radio doesn't pinpoint them, your cell phone can. So it's gonna be a balance, and not everybody's gonna be happy.
I just added, I'm looking at some of the correspondence that I've gotten since we started dealing with this. And one of the things that I hear in a recurring basis is that the process, although it is designed to, you know, take the aura of appearing before a board and so on and so forth out of it, the fact that the pre-filed testimony and the formalistic way in which this is done and is required is both intimidating, but also foreign to many of the participants, and that includes some of the towns. One of the things that some folks have said is that some towns are reluctant to proceed in actions that they might want to proceed in because they're put off by the process. And some of the suggestions have been not just more transparency, but more instruction. For example, like videos, pamphlets, documents, and so on, to help people walk through the process and really to understand what's going on. And those seem like sound, but again, I think it should be studied. The real question, though, is if we put too short a sunset in, studies are never, in my experience, fast. And then once they're done, the reaction to them is never as fast as perhaps you would like. I've seen so many of these studies that have gone for a year, and in fact, I almost had to go back and do more. And I would be more inclined to put a little bit longer period in for a sunset, but make the study come back whenever we want it to come back, and we would act on it at that point, and we could act on it, but we're not forced to do things precipitously. That's just.
Because part of we set up the process, and we said, you know, and this is in, you can still go through the local planning and zoning and go through Act 250. We said, okay, this will be, because we need to get this service out as a public safety, if nothing else, issue. We're gonna set up an alternative system set to be faster, but we made it very judicial. And the minute you make something very judicial, it is not user-friendly for non-lawyers. And we've worked on this with the PUC hearings. I know Margaret Cheney was very involved in trying to make that process better. Cell towers have brought utility regulation into the public purview. And so we're going to try and make this one, but there's always going to be that balance between the legal formality and the ability of people. I mean, we don't encourage people to go pro se in court, but we don't have a public defender in the utility section. So that might be something they come up with, is an ombudsman kind of thing.
Interesting idea.
Yeah. To walk individuals through the process.
I offer something else.
Yes.
So in terms of the extension and the deadline, in the event that we get extended for 2 or 3 years, depending on what the study turns back and lets us know what we need to do, some of the work product from that study, which might not necessarily need to be written into statute, is going to take time to produce. So even if the study tells us that it would be in the best interest of the public to potentially produce videos or templates to allow people to engage easier with the PUC, the study's going to have us get those recommendations, but it's still going to take time for the department to put any of that work together to see if it makes a difference in how the public perceives accessibility to the process.
And assuming that probably have to come up with some funding, which also takes time.
Always an issue.
Always an issue. Okay, any other questions? All right, Mr. Porter, anything else? Okay. It says he's live, so we'll let it go at that. So thank you. Ms. Marinello.
Yeah.
All right.
You want me up there, do it?
Both of us?
I'm happy to see
It was suggested that the PUC have, as a board, so we're trying to go higher up. We beat up on you enough. Just to see, you know, if for this to go forward, the board is gonna have to have some buy-in to the process, and we just wanted to bring you on board to talk to us about that.
Sure. So Kyle Landis Marinello, General Counsel for the Public Utility Commission. And it sounds like the question is whether we'd be okay with the department leading this study and making recommendations. And I don't see any problems with doing that. I think we would, as you've heard from Mr. Faber, the recommendations would likely be statutory changes that would need to happen. Because we can't make decisions or make changes to our process that are inconsistent with the statutory requirements. And 248A does have a number of specific deadlines that require things to move along very quickly. And there are consequences if we fail to meet those deadlines. And I think you've also heard 248A does have very strong provisions about substantial deference to towns and municipalities that participate in the process and their recommendations and their plans. And that is something we take very seriously and will continue to take seriously. We also take very seriously accessibility. That's a huge priority for the commission. And I think historically that has been an issue before, and sometimes people have stories from 10 or more years ago about not having accessibility, but I will say the current commission, it's a very high priority. We want people to be heard, but it's also sometimes people will be heard, they'll have a process, but if they're ultimately unhappy with the outcome, that can lead to looking back and not being happy with the process. And so I think a study would make sense to dig into these issues. And in terms of buy-in, there's absolutely buy-in for the commission to make our processes open and accessible to everyone.
I know we worked very well when we were trying to make, I think, the board's process. Apparently he missed 248A. So I think, yeah, if everybody puts their heads together, I think it's essential to get the towns, because it doesn't do any good to give the towns deference if the towns, they need to be active players. So we will perhaps mention at least one organization you might want to work with. Okay, so committee, any questions? Yes.
Act 248 set up to solve the backlog of what was in Act 250 that was supposed to be similar to Act 250 and accessibility. So we don't have a backlog. And the concerns that are raised, at least is kind of overly legalistic. At the same time, the hearing officer is not a lawyer, which is kind of a contradiction. And that's certainly less legalistic. So raise suggestions that the committee comes up with. We want us to wait for, and we don't need to deal with this yet because the sunset's 3 years out or two years out. But that's my issue.
Okay, but for the sunset to be meaningful, it needs to have a reasonable amount of time. You companies plan where they're gonna do cell tower and coverage and mapping and finding alternatives, land acquisition, a whole lot of other things. But because it's going forward, doesn't mean we aren't going to deal with this. Any senator is free to put in a bill next year to make changes. But I will commit that we will get that report back and take it up, and I'm sure we'll have a bill we can put it on, or we can hold one from this year. And move it forward. We can always do a committee bill or stick it up miscellaneous tax, but if we want, yeah, we will definitely look at it next year. But it may take legislative changes, it may take some time to make those changes. We don't know yet. We don't know what they're gonna say. Okay. What I'm going to do is ask, I think it's Ellen is our drafter, to draft us up some language around the study so that we can amend and then make decisions and get this one on the road. Okay. Yes.
What foundation is there for the assumption that a shorter deadline, that if we give a longer deadline, the committee will take all the time available? In other words, if we want this done quickly, we should give them the one argument is, if you want this done quicker, you should give it a shorter deadline. And the longer the deadline, the more time the committee, the way your junk expands to fill the storage space. Your perceived needs expand to use up your income. That's so too, the more time they have, that's how much time they'll take. Or is it simply that, can we trust the committee to do its work as diligently and quickly as possible? We should be prepared for the fact that it might take 3 years. We should give them that time.
Senator, you're a member of this committee, and so any member of this committee, I don't think I'm known for saying I'll take something up and not doing it. I'm committed to going through that and working with the committee. We will get the study back next January. We will go through it. We will decide if there needs to be legal changes, procedural changes. We won't know what it is until we get it, and then we can move forward. I think the reason, this is procedure though. They will continue on the present procedure until we change it. What they're saying is that they need to know they've got in order to do everything that goes into good planning, they need that 3-year window. You just don't get up this morning and say, I think I'll put a cell tower up on Hubbard Park. That it takes time. You've got a hearing, that they need to be able to go forward. We can change the rules anytime we want to change the rules. It's going to sunset. So there's a law in place, but we can change the procedures in that law anytime we want. This just wouldn't do, the 248A will go away if we don't extend the sunset. And no one knows what will come after. So this gives surety that you're going to be able to go forward with planning unless we have reached the point where we want to say we've got enough cell towers and we don't need any more cell coverage in Vermont. I'm not prepared to face my constituents 5 miles down 12 that don't have cell coverage.
I had trouble making the phone call from in front of Calvin Coolidge's house.
Oh, very definitely. You're in a hole. Yeah, I mean, but people there have heart attacks.
Yeah.
And they slide off that road and it can be a pretty lonely road at night. They need to be able to do it, so we're trying to find. So I will ask Ellen, I'll tell her what we have discussed, and I will ask her to draft it up. And then we can move forward. And we are way ahead of schedule. Looking too good. So anything I can talk to you about? I think we're finished with 248A unless somebody wants. My attention is, where have I got time? We've got,
And just clarify on the last
Yeah.
point, some of the former committee. So, well, my understanding is the 3-year extension doesn't mean that the report or the committee has to take 3 years. We're gonna ask for the report this coming January, so we can take this up again while they continue
Right.
doing what they're doing. We can make changes this biennium next session, right? Okay, just making sure I understand.
I was told at noon that approach needs us to have sports wagering out because they're booking the money. So we've got testimony this afternoon, and then I'm gonna put that on tomorrow or Friday for a possible vote, depending on how far we get. Our area in there are the licensing fees, so we need,
There's also the issue that I read yesterday regarding taxation.
yes.
And there is something we should be talking about that when we talk. I've spoken with the commissioner. I've gotten some input from Abby regarding tax. There are some
Okay.
things that we can
And
do.
we have invited the tax department this afternoon. So we will talk to them. But we're gonna be looking at the money. And then I will put this one on either tomorrow or Friday, depending on how quickly Ellen. Ellen is also doing little things like the housing bill. And she's got one other really big one this year, so we are the small fish in this one, but if she can get this drafted for us, we'll get it on the agenda and try and get it out of here. We've got we've got a couple confirmations. We've got the fee bill, that came to us yesterday. We're gonna walk through that. But that would be one we need to get out too. This is the professional regulation fee from the Secretary of State's office. There's another fee bill floating around with or without fees, but it hasn't shown up here yet. So unless somebody has something else they want to do, we are out until,
Chris Root catch you about the T-bill.
no,
So I'm in transportation.
Yeah.
I was gonna try to catch you, but he thinks if we already talked about the mileage-based user fee, and since they stripped out the fees, it was sent to us, but if we can either release it to appropriations, he would love for appropriations to get it as soon as this committee is ready to release the T-bill. Either by a vote or just releasing it since the fees were stripped out of it.
fees were stripped out.
The mileage-based user fee.
So what we'll do is vote it out without recommendation because we have, why don't you put that on? Can we add that to the agenda at this point?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, like today?
Okay, so I'll let the budget council know.
Okay, yes, see how soon we can get that on.
What's the number for that bill?
H 479.
Because we actually got the bill. All right, that one we did. We've been through so many fees with and without bills. Okay, then we will, there are no fees in it now. It's going into the budget. And that was, the mileage fee is also going in there?
So we talked
Is a
about-
study. What's an implementation study? Okay, well, that doesn't really do anything to us either. Okay, then you're out. Then we'll come back and we'll work through this. I think we're also gonna vote out 146 because or it keeps being passed to me, is that it is not gonna impact the revenue, so that can go out. And we will spend as much time as we can. Maybe we'll see if Commissioner Knight could come early. And maybe we could start with her testimony, tell her she's free, she could come over at 2:30. Okay, so
Poor Grady can't come until 4:15.
Michael O'Grady can't come till 4:15. All right, you're out. Fine, we'll start at 3. Why are you not doing those with Mr. O'Grady? He's harder to get hold of than.
He's a busy guy.